So it's a real privilege and pleasure to introduce Stuart Acuff, who's an organizer, director for the National AFL-CIO. He has extensive experience organizing. I saw him speak down in St. Louis, and it was remarkable. It's a real treat to have Brother Acuff with us up in Brewer to speak a little bit on our July 4th. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. It's a real pleasure and real honor to be here with you tonight to celebrate our country and to celebrate our freedom. I'll be brief. With government surveillance in our country like we haven't seen in decades, warrantless wiretaps digging through bank records, and lies like none of us have expected since Richard Nixon. They lied to get us into an unnecessary war. They lied about torture. They lied about extraordinary renditions, and they have lied to deface and defame the honor of the United States of America. And they are robbing us of our financial and our economic freedom. Bush took the largest federal budget surplus in the history of the United States of America, and in 4 years turned it into the largest budget deficit in the history of the United States of America. This Congress has raised its own pay 7 times since it's raised the minimum wage, still a paltry and pitiful $5.15 an hour. 36% more of us live in poverty now than we did when Bush took over. And they are transferring greater and greater wealth by the tax cuts. But not just by the tax cuts, by slashing our wages, moving jobs overseas, outsourcing, as the congressman said, and slashing our benefits. 46 million Americans without health care, another 40 million with inadequate health care. Bush trade policy has cost us 3 million good-paying manufacturing jobs in just 5 years, more than in the 22 years previous to that. Let me tell you something about trade. They say trade is important to build the quality of life around the world. Let me tell you something. After NAFTA, the Mexican government was forced to take the subsidy off for the growing of corn and beans. People have been eating corn and beans in Mexico since there's been people in Mexico. But when they took the subsidy off, the farmers and campesinos could no longer afford to grow it, and the workers could no longer afford to buy it. That's why people are immigrating to this country, to feed their kids and to try to find work and food. In the 18 months prior to the FTAA summit in November of 2003 in Miami, we surveyed the Mexican economy. Do you know that they lost 556 factories to China in one 18-month period? Our trade policy is driving the rest of the world to ruin, as well as this country to ruin. Bush and his right-wing gang are robbing us of the freedom of peace of mind. Freedom of peace of mind. We may well be the first generation of Americans to leave our kids and grandkids a lower quality of life, a lower standard of living, less opportunity, less justice, more avarice, less compassion, and more greed. And perhaps the most important freedom they've taken from us is the freedom to form unions and bargain collectively. That freedom is a basic human right, and it is how working folks have accessed the American dream now for 70 years. That freedom is essential to democracy because, my brothers and sisters, when you silence the voice of workers, you silence the voice of the people, and they are doing all that they can right now to silence our voice. And that freedom is our bulwark against the oligarchy of inequality, because sooner or later, when economic inequality gets too out of whack, and the rich keep getting richer, and the gap between the rich and the rest of us is growing every day. Sooner or later, when economic inequality gets too out of whack, that economic inequality will trump and overwhelm political democracy. And that's why we have to be on the front lines of this fight right now. In almost every organizing campaign, workers are routinely threatened, intimidated, and retaliated against, even fired, just like the workers here at Eastern Maine Medical Center, and that's why their struggle is so important. Let me tell you real quickly, it is so bad in workplaces across America when workers try to form unions that Human Rights Watch has said our nation is in violation of fundamental internationally accepted human rights standards for failing to protect our own people from their fight to form a union. There's something wrong with that in America. We got to have a fight with Verizon. We got to have a fight with Verizon, a fight to stop them from abandoning rural New England. Think of the arrogance. Think of the arrogance. We're not making enough money off of you anymore, so we're just going to walk away from you. And we got to have a fight with Verizon also to ensure that the workers of Verizon Business, formerly MCI, and Verizon Wireless have a free and fair opportunity to decide for themselves, unretaliated against, unintimidated, of whether or not they want to form a union with the IBEW and the CWA. We got a lot of business to do with Verizon, brothers and sisters. Solidarity expressed by this fundraiser. Over $11,000, $4,000 from one shop of 500 people, and I would say it, but as soon as I said it, I'd screw it up. But it's something like Millinocket. 500 workers there. Right now, the Bush Labor Board is in the process, if we don't stop them, of stripping another 500,000 to 2 million workers of any opportunity to be in a union. Right now, the Bush Labor Board, as a way to further weaken the labor movement, is redefining the question of what it is to be a supervisor. From the definition that we have lived with since the enactment of the Wagner Act, now the National Labor Relations Act in 1935, that a supervisor hires and fires other workers, and settles grievances, they are considering redefining a supervisor to anyone who directs the work of others. It's called the Kentucky River decision, and we expect a decision by the end of this summer. If they do that, every union registered nurse will no longer be part of the union. Every union foreman on a union construction job will no longer be able to be part of a union. Every lead man, every lead man in every mine in the nation's mines, and workers in many of our manufacturing. We have got to stop the Kentucky River decision, and you've got a chance to put your shoulder to the wheel right here next Tuesday afternoon in Brewer, Bangor, Maine at 4 o'clock. Where are we meeting, Jack? In front of the hospital, Eastern Maine. We have a piece of legislation called the Employee Free Choice Act. Mike is one of the original co-sponsors on the bill. I'm sure Gene Hay will be on the bill. Olympia Snow is not a co-sponsor of the Employee Free Choice Act. It'll do 3 things. Gene, I want you to go around Maine and tell union folks she ain't on the bill, and you will be on the bill. It does 3 things. Says workers can form a union by card check. Says 2, bosses can't run away from a union, that if you can't negotiate a contract after a year, you can go to arbitration, and an arbitrator will impose a contract. And 3, real punishments for employers who violate workers' rights and violate the law. It's called the Employee Free Choice Act. It'll do wonders. Now you say, Stuart, that's great, but how are you ever going to get something like that passed? Then you read the Republicans have taken over everything. Let me tell you right now, 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, takes 218 to be a majority, takes 51 members of the Senate to be a majority. This bill, in Dennis Hastert's House of Representatives, has 216 co-sponsors in the House and 43 co-sponsors in the Senate. When we elect a president who will sign it, we will pass this legislation and we will change America. My brothers and sisters, we got to have a fight about what they've done to our country. We got to have a fight about what they're doing to our kids. We got to have a fight about what they're doing to the future of our grandkids, and it starts this summer. We got to go to the polls this year and make it a referendum on human rights in America. We got to make the right to organize and bargain collectively the number 1 issue in this year's elections. We got to go to the polls mad about what Bush and his right wing are doing to us this year, and we got to take everybody with us. Thank you. God bless you.